The city was just waking up when Daniel tied his worn shoes and quietly stepped outside. The sky was still gray, and the air carried a faint chill. His neighborhood was always a mix of silence and distant sounds: the rumble of buses starting their routes, the bark of dogs, and the soft cries of babies who didn't know it was too early for the world to stir. Daniel breathed deeply, trying to gather strength for another long day. He was a single father, and life had taught him how to be both strong and tender. Years ago, when his son was just a baby, Daniel's world had changed. His partner left, and from that day forward, he had raised his boy alone. Some nights he wondered if he had enough to give, enough money, enough time, enough wisdom. But each morning, when his little boy's eyes lit up at the sight of him, Daniel knew he had all the reason he needed to keep pushing forward. Daniel's son, Malik, was 6 years old. He was small but full of energy, with a wide smile that could soften even the hardest of days. Malik didn't know about the struggles his father carried. To him, his father was the strongest man in the world, someone who could fix a broken toy, chase away nightmares, and find ways to make dinner out of the smallest groceries. Daniel worked 2 jobs, one at a diner in the morning and another as a cleaner at night. The hours were long, and his body often ached, but he never complained in front of Malik. When people saw him serving tables with a tired smile or scrubbing floors long after most had gone home, they didn't know the full story. They didn't know that every tip and every paycheck went into keeping a roof over his son's head, into paying for school supplies, into making sure Malik never felt less than any other child. Despite the hardships, Daniel made sure Malik's life was filled with love. They had little routines that kept their bond strong. On Saturdays, when Daniel didn't have to work in the morning, they would go to the park together. Malik would ride his old bicycle, wobbling but determined, while Daniel jogged beside him. On Sundays, they would sit by the window of their small apartment, eat pancakes, and tell stories. Daniel often made up tales about superheroes who always found a way to save the day, but Malik knew the real hero was sitting right in front of him. Money was always tight. Daniel's old car had broken down months ago, so he relied on buses and walking. Groceries were planned carefully, with no room for extras. Sometimes, when Malik asked for something small, a toy he saw in a store window or a special snack, Daniel's heart ached when he had to say no. But Malik rarely complained. He had learned to find joy in the little things, like drawing pictures with crayons, listening to bedtime stories, or cuddling with his father after a long day. Daniel's biggest fear was Malik getting sick. Doctor visits, hospital bills, those were things he could barely afford. He prayed every night for his son's health, asking for just enough strength to keep going. On one particular morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. Malik was still asleep, his small body curled under a blanket. Daniel stood for a moment, watching him breathe softly. His heart swelled with both love and worry. He touched his son's forehead gently and whispered, "Daddy's got you, always." He quietly prepared breakfast, just some toast and eggs. By the time Malik woke up, rubbing his eyes and yawning, Daniel was ready with a smile. "Good morning, champ," he said warmly. "Morning, Daddy," Malik replied, hugging him. These little moments gave Daniel strength. No matter how tired or overwhelmed he felt, Malik's hugs reminded him that he was doing something right. After breakfast, Daniel dressed for work, putting on the same uniform he had worn for years. The fabric was faded, but he kept it clean and neat. Malik sat at the table, coloring in his notebook. "Daddy, look," he said proudly, showing a drawing of the two of them holding hands. Daniel smiled, kissed the top of his head, and said, "That's the best picture I've ever seen." When Daniel left for work that day, his mind was heavy. Rent was due in a week, and he wasn't sure how he would manage. The diner shifts had been slow, and tips weren't enough. But he couldn't let Malik know. He would find a way, he always did. At the diner, Daniel served customers with patience, even when they were rude or demanding. His co-workers liked him because he was dependable. He moved quickly, balancing plates of food, pouring coffee, and wiping tables. Every coin in the tip jar felt like a step closer to keeping his son safe. During his short break, Daniel pulled out his phone and looked at a picture of Malik. It was from their last trip to the park. Malik grinning proudly with his arms raised after managing to pedal his bike on his own. Daniel's chest tightened. He whispered to himself, "Everything I do is for you." That evening, after finishing his diner shift, Daniel rushed home to make sure Malik had dinner before heading to his second job. He prepared a simple meal, and they ate together at the small kitchen table. Malik told him about school, about how he had drawn another picture and how his teacher said he was good at storytelling. Daniel listened intently, nodding, encouraging, letting his son feel heard. After dinner, he tucked Malik into bed. "Daddy, can you tell me a story?" Malik asked. Daniel was exhausted, but he couldn't say no. He made up a tale about a brave knight who had nothing but his courage and his love for his family, yet somehow always won battles. Malik's eyes sparkled as he listened. Before falling asleep, he whispered, "Daddy, you're my knight." Daniel kissed his forehead and held back tears. He wanted his son to believe in dreams, to feel safe and loved, no matter how hard life was outside their small apartment. As he left for his night job, Daniel walked through the dimly lit streets with heavy steps. He often wondered if life would ever get easier, if Malik would ever have more than just the basics. But deep inside, he knew one thing: he would never give up. What Daniel didn't know was that soon, life would throw him into a situation he could never have imagined. A single hospital visit would change everything. A stranger, a successful woman he had never met, would step into their lives. And through the innocent words of his little boy, truths would be revealed that would shake the very foundation of his world. For now, though, Daniel's story was simple: a father, a son, and the quiet strength of love that held them together through the toughest of days. The following week began like any other. Daniel's days were long and tiring, but he held on because Malik's smile gave him hope. Life for the father and son followed a familiar rhythm: early mornings, quick breakfasts, school drop-offs, and late nights filled with stories and hugs. But one evening, as Daniel returned from work, he noticed something unusual. Malik wasn't his usual lively self. Instead of running to the door to greet him, the little boy sat on the couch, holding his stomach and frowning. "Hey champ, what's wrong?" Daniel asked gently, setting down his worn-out bag. Malik looked up with tired eyes. "Daddy, my tummy hurts." Daniel's heart sank. He walked over quickly, kneeling in front of his son. He touched his forehead and felt warmth. Panic stirred inside him. A father's greatest fear had crept into his small apartment: his son was sick. "Okay, buddy," Daniel said softly, trying to stay calm. "We're going to take care of you." He gave Malik some water and tried to make him comfortable, but the boy winced in pain. Hours passed, and the pain only grew worse. By nightfall, Daniel knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to take Malik to the hospital. The thought of hospital bills terrified him, but nothing mattered more than his son's health. He grabbed Malik's coat, lifted him into his arms, and whispered, "Hold on, champ. Daddy's here." The bus ride to the hospital felt endless. Daniel kept checking Malik, kissing his forehead, and whispering words of comfort. Around them, strangers glanced with sympathy, but Daniel's focus never shifted. The only thing he saw was his little boy, curled against his chest, trusting him completely. When they arrived, the hospital lights were bright against the dark night sky. The automatic doors opened, welcoming them into a world of urgency and quiet fear. Daniel hurried to the front desk. "My son, he's in pain, stomach, fever," Daniel said quickly, his voice shaking. The nurse nodded and directed them to the emergency area. Soon, Malik was placed on a small bed, his tiny body looking even smaller against the crisp white sheets. Daniel sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. As doctors and nurses moved around, Daniel's heart raced. He hated hospitals. They reminded him of how fragile life was, how quickly everything could change. He prayed silently, begging for Malik's safety. While waiting for tests, Daniel tried to distract his son. "Remember the superhero we talked about? The one who never gives up?" Malik nodded weakly. "That's you, champ. You're the bravest boy I know," Daniel whispered, brushing his son's hair back. It was then, in the middle of his fear, that something unexpected happened. Malik lifted his little hand and pointed toward the hallway. "Daddy," he said in a tired but clear voice. "That's Mommy." Daniel blinked, confused. "What did you say, buddy?" Malik pointed again. A tall woman in a tailored suit was walking through the hallway with confidence. Her presence stood out immediately. Her clothes were expensive, her hair perfectly styled, and her face calm yet focused. She didn't look like someone visiting the hospital for herself. Instead, she seemed like a person used to being in control, even in chaotic places. "That's Mommy," Malik repeated softly, his eyes fixed on the woman. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. For a second, he thought Malik was just imagining things. After all, children sometimes said things that made no sense. But the way his son looked at her with certainty, with recognition, made Daniel pause. He shook his head quickly. "Malik, sweetheart, you must be mistaken. Mommy isn't here." But Malik insisted, his little voice stronger this time. "No, Daddy. That's Mommy." Daniel turned to look at the woman again. She was speaking to a doctor now, her gestures confident. Something about her presence unsettled him. She carried herself like someone important, like someone who belonged to a different world, a world far from his humble apartment and endless struggles. Still, the thought seemed impossible. How could this woman, dressed like a millionaire, have anything to do with them? Trying to brush it off, Daniel focused on his son. "It's okay, champ. Just rest. Daddy's here." But deep inside, he couldn't shake the unease. Children had instincts that adults often ignored. Why had Malik called her Mommy of all things? Minutes later, as Daniel sat holding Malik's hand, the woman walked past their room. For a brief second, her eyes landed on them. She froze. Daniel noticed it, the quick flicker of surprise in her gaze, the way her confident steps faltered. For a moment, their eyes met. He felt as though she saw more than just a tired father and a sick boy. He felt as though she recognized something, too. She didn't stop, though. She quickly regained her composure and continued walking, but that small pause was enough to send Daniel's thoughts spinning. Who was she? Why did Malik call her Mommy? The doctor returned with some test results, pulling Daniel back to the moment. Thankfully, it wasn't anything life-threatening. Malik had an infection that needed treatment but would recover with proper care. Relief washed over Daniel, and he thanked the doctor again and again. But even as he held Malik's hand, the image of the woman lingered in his mind. Later, when Malik was resting after receiving medicine, Daniel couldn't help but ask softly, "Why did you say she's Mommy, champ?" Malik, half asleep, whispered, "Because she feels like Mommy." Daniel sat there, stunned. He didn't know what that meant, but the certainty in his son's voice chilled him. That night, after Malik finally drifted off, Daniel walked to the hospital hallway for a break. He leaned against the wall, rubbing his tired eyes. He told himself he was being foolish. Life had no room for mysteries like this. He had bills to pay, jobs to keep, and a son to raise. But as he looked down the hallway, he saw her again. The woman. She was speaking quietly with another doctor, her expression softer now, almost vulnerable. Daniel didn't know her name, her story, or why his son felt such a strong connection. All he knew was that this night had planted a question in his heart that he could not ignore. The little boy's words kept echoing in his mind, "That's mommy." Daniel didn't realize it yet, but this moment in the hospital was the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. A door had quietly opened, leading him and his son toward a truth that would change everything. For now, he pushed the thoughts away and returned to Malik's side, holding his son's hand tightly. Whatever came, he would face it. After all, he was a father, and his love for his boy would guide him through any storm, even one that carried secrets he never expected to uncover. The next morning, Daniel sat by Malik's hospital bed, still holding his little boy's hand. Malik was resting better now. The fever had gone down, and his breathing was steady. Relief washed over Daniel, but his mind wasn't calm. The memory of last night clung to him, the woman in the elegant suit, the way Malik had pointed and said, "That's mommy." Daniel tried to push it aside. Maybe Malik had simply imagined it? Children sometimes confused strangers with people they wished for. Maybe his son longed for a mother figure so much that his innocent heart had attached that title to the first kind woman he saw. But deep inside, Daniel couldn't deny the strange way the woman had paused, the quick flicker in her eyes as she looked at them. Later that day, as Daniel stood near the vending machine in the hospital lobby, he saw her again. She wasn't in a hurry this time. She carried herself with the same confidence, but now she looked less like a busy executive and more like a woman lost in thought. Daniel hesitated. Part of him wanted to approach her, to ask if she had noticed his son. But another part of him held back. He didn't want to look foolish, and he definitely didn't want to risk Malik's feelings. What if he asked, and the woman laughed at the thought? What if she dismissed them entirely? So, he stayed quiet, watching her walk away once more. When he returned to Malik's room, his son was awake, sitting up with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, did you see her?" Malik asked eagerly. Daniel sighed. "Who, champ?" "Mommy," Malik said softly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and took his son's hand. "Buddy, you know Daddy loves you more than anything, right?" Malik nodded. "And you know Mommy isn't here. It's just you and me." But Malik shook his head stubbornly. "No, Daddy. She's here. I saw her. She feels like Mommy." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. Children didn't usually explain things in logical words, but they spoke from instinct. Malik wasn't simply wishing. He sounded sure. The day passed slowly. Doctors checked Malik again, assuring Daniel he would be fine after a few more treatments. Daniel spent the hours reading stories, helping Malik color in his notebook, and making silly faces to keep him smiling. But every time the door opened, Malik's eyes flicked toward it, as if waiting for someone. That evening, Daniel stepped into the hallway for some fresh air. The hospital was quieter now, the buzz of the day replaced by the stillness of night. He leaned against the wall, exhausted. And then he saw her again. This time, she wasn't alone. A group of doctors walked with her, clearly showing her respect. They addressed her politely, almost formally. She nodded at their words, her face calm and professional. Daniel realized she wasn't just a visitor, she was someone important here. Maybe part of the hospital board, maybe a benefactor. She carried herself like someone used to being in charge. As they passed, her eyes once again landed on Daniel. And for the second time, she hesitated. The doctors continued speaking, but she seemed distracted, her gaze lingering a moment too long on him. Daniel looked away quickly, uncomfortable under her stare. He felt out of place, his worn jeans, his tired face, his simple life standing in front of a woman who clearly belonged to another world. Later that night, as Daniel tried to sleep in the chair beside Malik's bed, he kept replaying the moments in his head. Why had she looked at them like that? Why did Malik feel so certain? The next morning brought more surprises. As Daniel went to speak with the nurse about Malik's medication, he overheard whispers from two staff members. "Did you see her yesterday?" one nurse said excitedly. "Yes," the other replied. "That's Miss Carter, the CEO of Carter Enterprises. She's one of the biggest donors to this hospital." Daniel froze. CEO. The word echoed in his mind. Suddenly, everything made sense: the expensive suit, the confidence, the way people respected her. She wasn't just wealthy. She was a leader, a woman with influence and power. He returned to Malik's room in a daze. His son looked up at him with curious eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy coming?" Daniel sat down slowly. "Champ, that woman you saw, she's not Mommy. She's someone important here, someone who helps a lot of people. But she's not your mom." Malik frowned, unconvinced. "She looked at me like she knew me, Daddy." Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep inside, he had noticed it too. Later that day, fate decided to intervene. As Daniel walked down the hallway to get Malik some juice, he almost collided with her. She stopped, her eyes meeting his up close for the first time. "I'm sorry," Daniel said quickly, stepping aside. But she didn't move on. Instead, she studied him with a curious expression. "Your son, he's the little boy in room 12, isn't he?" Daniel stiffened. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "I saw him yesterday," she said softly. He pointed at me." Daniel's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to mention it. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "He said you were his mommy." Silence hung between them for a long moment. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, Daniel saw a crack in her composed exterior. She looked almost shaken. "I don't know why he would say that," Daniel added quickly, trying to protect his son. "He doesn't remember his mother. It's just been me raising him." The woman nodded slowly, but her gaze didn't leave his face. "Children, they have instincts we don't always understand," she murmured, almost to herself. Daniel didn't know what to say. He felt caught between wanting to demand answers and wanting to shield Malik from disappointment. Finally, she extended her hand. "I'm Evelyn Carter." Her name struck him like a bell. Everyone in the city had heard of her. Evelyn Carter, the millionaire CEO who built her company from nothing, known for her brilliance and strength. Daniel hesitated before shaking her hand. His calloused fingers felt rough against her manicured ones. "Daniel," he said simply. Evelyn studied him for another moment, then smiled politely. "It was nice meeting you, Daniel. I hope your son recovers quickly." With that, she walked away, leaving Daniel standing in the hallway, his heart pounding. When he returned to the room, Malik looked up eagerly. "Did you talk to Mommy?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Her name is Evelyn. She's not your mommy, champ." But Malik only smiled knowingly. "She is. You'll see." Daniel sat in silence, troubled. His son's certainty, Evelyn's reaction, the way fate kept pushing them together, it all felt too strange to ignore. Something was happening, something bigger than he could understand. And deep in his heart, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The hospital felt different that morning. Daniel noticed it the moment he woke up in the chair beside Malik's bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, and Malik was already awake, coloring in his notebook with bright crayons. But something in the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to happen. Daniel stretched his sore back and rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept well. Thoughts of Evelyn Carter had kept him awake most of the night. Her name, her face, her calm voice, all of it replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't stop hearing. He wanted to forget, to push away the idea that she could possibly have any connection to his son. But Malik's words, "she feels like mommy," echoed louder than reason. When Evelyn walked into the room later that morning, Daniel's heart skipped. She wasn't alone. A doctor accompanied her, but it was clear Evelyn had asked to visit. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice warmer than before. Malik's face lit up instantly. "Mommy," he exclaimed, dropping his crayon and reaching out toward her. Daniel froze, embarrassed. "Malik," he started, but Evelyn stepped forward before he could stop his son. She knelt beside the bed, meeting Malik's eager eyes. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently. Her smile trembled, as though she were holding back a storm of emotions. She reached for his small hand, and to Daniel's shock, Malik let her hold it as if he had always known her. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to pull Malik back, to protect him from disappointment. But he couldn't ignore the way Evelyn looked at his son with tenderness, with familiarity, with something deeper than mere kindness. The doctor cleared his throat politely. "Mr. Daniel, Malik's test results are improving. With rest and medicine, he'll recover fully." Relief flooded Daniel again, but it was quickly tangled with new confusion as Evelyn lingered even after the doctor left. "Why are you here?" Daniel asked quietly once they were alone. His voice wasn't angry, just weary. Evelyn's eyes shifted from Malik back to him. "Because I couldn't ignore what your son said. I couldn't ignore how it made me feel." Daniel frowned. "And how did it make you feel?" She hesitated, her confident composure faltering. "Like a piece of me I lost years ago suddenly found me again." Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't know what she meant, but his instincts told him it was important. "Malik doesn't know his mother," Daniel said firmly. "She left when he was a baby. He barely remembers her." "Please don't confuse him." Evelyn shook her head. "No. You don't understand. I need to tell you something." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "When I was very young, I had a child. Circumstances were difficult. I wasn't ready, and I made a choice I've regretted every day since. That child was adopted." Daniel's world tilted. His mouth went dry. She looked directly at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Your son Malik, he looks exactly like the baby I held in my arms before I said goodbye. I recognized him the moment I saw him." Daniel's chest tightened so hard it hurt. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but memories flooded his mind: how Malik was adopted when he was just a few months old, how the agency never gave much information about the biological mother. Could it be true? "You're saying," Daniel struggled to form the words. "You're saying Malik is your son?" Evelyn nodded slowly, her voice breaking. "Yes. I know it sounds impossible, but deep in my heart, I'm certain." Silence filled the room. Daniel turned to look at Malik, who was happily showing Evelyn his crayon drawing, as if this revelation was no surprise to him. Children, Daniel thought bitterly, sometimes knew the truth before adults dared to believe it. His hands shook. He didn't know whether to feel anger, fear, or relief. For years, he had carried the weight of being both mother and father to Malik. And now, suddenly, the woman before him claimed to share that bond by blood. "Why now?" Daniel asked, his voice heavy. "Why show up now, after all these years?" Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Because I didn't know. I didn't know where he was, who he was with. I searched, but adoption laws made it impossible. And now by chance, by fate, I walked into this hospital, and there he was. My son." Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to reject it, to protect Malik from the chaos of this truth. But another part of him, deep and quiet, whispered that maybe this was no accident. Maybe Malik had been right all along. Evelyn reached for Malik again, brushing his hair tenderly. He deserves to know. He deserves all the love he can have. From you, and from me. Daniel stood silent, torn between worlds. He thought of the years he spent working double shifts, missing meals so Malik could eat, sitting awake at night when Malik had fevers. He thought of the countless bedtime stories, the scraped knees he bandaged, the tears he wiped away. He had been the one there. He had earned the title of parent every single day. And now, this woman, this millionaire CEO, wanted to step into their lives. "What do you want?" Daniel asked finally, his voice low. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes steady. "I don't want to take him away from you. I only want to be part of his life. To give him what I couldn't back then. To give him love, security, everything." Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't trust her yet. He didn't trust her world, her wealth, her polished smile. But when he glanced at Malik, who was laughing as Evelyn drew a clumsy flower with his crayons, Daniel saw something he had never seen before: a child seeing himself in someone else, recognizing a bond words couldn't explain. Daniel sank into the chair, his hands covering his face. Life had never been simple, but this was a storm he hadn't prepared for. "Please, Daniel," Evelyn whispered. "Don't shut me out. Let me at least try." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was Malik humming happily as he colored. Finally, Daniel lifted his head. His eyes were tired, but his voice carried quiet strength. "I've spent years protecting him. If you want to be part of his life, you'll have to prove it. Not with money. Not with promises. With actions. With love. Because that's what being a parent is." Evelyn nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I will. I promise." In that moment, the truth was no longer hidden. The hospital walls had witnessed the unveiling of a bond broken long ago but rediscovered through the innocent words of a child. Daniel didn't know what the future would hold, whether Evelyn's presence would heal or complicate their lives. But one thing was certain: the secret was out, and nothing would ever be the same after that morning at the hospital. Life for Daniel, Malik, and Evelyn began to change in ways none of them could have imagined. The days that followed were a mixture of wonder, hesitation, and learning. Malik, blissfully unaware of the complexities of adult emotions, simply saw Evelyn as someone familiar and kind. He clung to her hand, shared his toys, and told her stories about school and friends. Daniel watched quietly, learning to share the most precious part of his life with someone else, all while fearing the unknown. Evelyn, for her part, was patient. She didn't rush Daniel or Malik. She knew that a connection lost for years could not be forced. She spent hours at the hospital, helping Malik with meals, sitting beside him during his check-ups, and reading stories at night. She remembered how to soothe him in ways only a mother could, and every time she did, Daniel felt a twinge of both awe and insecurity. He had been there for every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every tear. Could someone else fit into that space he had carved out with so much love and sacrifice? One evening, after Malik had fallen asleep, Daniel and Evelyn sat in the quiet hospital lounge. The hum of machines in the background was comforting in a strange way. For the first time since she had revealed the truth, Evelyn spoke openly. "Daniel," she began softly, "I know I can't erase the years I wasn't there. I know I can't replace you. But I want to try to be part of his life, and maybe, part of yours too, if you'll let me." Daniel looked at her, his eyes heavy with both exhaustion and thought. He thought about all the times he had been Malik's protector, his teacher, his whole world. But he also thought about the possibility of relief, of shared responsibility, of someone who could love Malik in ways he sometimes wished he could. "I don't know if I can trust easily," Daniel admitted. "And I don't know if Malik needs more people in his life right now. He's just starting to recover from his illness. I can't risk confusing him." Evelyn nodded, her expression serious but calm. I understand. I only want to move slowly. I'll take it one step at a time. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began to see Evelyn not just as a stranger, but as a woman who genuinely cared for his son. She didn't flaunt her wealth or status. She brought simple things: a favorite storybook, a small toy, a gentle smile. Malik responded naturally, laughing at her jokes and asking her to stay longer. Daniel realized that her presence wasn't taking away from him, it was adding a new layer to their lives. One afternoon, Daniel returned home from work to find Malik and Evelyn in the living room, building a tower of colorful blocks. Malik looked up and waved. "Daddy. Look what Mommy and I made." Daniel smiled, his heart swelling. The word mommy still felt strange coming from Malik's mouth, but there was no jealousy in the boy's voice, only joy and excitement. Daniel sat down beside them, helping add the last blocks to the tower. It wasn't a replacement. It was a collaboration. As the days turned into weeks, Evelyn continued to show her commitment. She attended parent-teacher meetings with Daniel, helped Malik with homework, and even cooked simple meals with him. Daniel observed quietly at first, still unsure of how to fully accept her into their home. But each time he saw Malik's happiness, each time he saw the way his son's eyes lit up when Evelyn smiled at him, Daniel's heart softened. Then came the first real test. Malik had been invited to a birthday party at school. Daniel had been preparing to go alone, worried about how to manage Malik with his fragile health. Evelyn offered to join, insisting that it would be good for Malik to have both parents there. Daniel hesitated but finally agreed. At the party, Daniel watched as Malik ran to greet his friends, Evelyn close behind him. She encouraged him gently, cheered when he won a small game, and even joined in the laughter when he tripped and fell over a balloon. Daniel realized then that Evelyn wasn't trying to replace him, she was complimenting him. She was adding joy, safety, and love where he alone could not always provide. That evening, on the ride home, Daniel finally spoke. I think we can try this together. If it's good for Malik, then I want to try too." Evelyn reached over and touched his hand briefly. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more than you know." The days that followed were filled with small, ordinary moments that built extraordinary bonds. They went to the park together, shared ice cream cones, and spent rainy afternoons inside playing board games. Malik's laughter became the soundtrack of their new life, a reminder that love could be shared, not divided. Daniel began to notice subtle changes in himself too. He felt lighter, less burdened, and more hopeful. Evelyn didn't overshadow him, she supported him. She encouraged him to take breaks, to rest, to allow himself to enjoy life. Slowly, he realized that a family was not just about blood or sacrifice, it was about connection, care, and presence. One quiet evening, after Malik had gone to bed, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. "I never thought life would bring me here," Daniel said softly. "I was scared for so long that no one could ever be part of our little world." Evelyn smiled. "I was scared too. But sometimes, the right people come into your life at the right time, even if it's years later than you expected." Daniel looked at her, realizing that she had earned a place not just in Malik's heart, but in his own. She wasn't perfect, and neither was he, but together they were learning how to be better parents, better partners, and better humans. The next day, Daniel took Malik and Evelyn to the hospital for a routine checkup. Malik ran ahead, holding both their hands. The nurse smiled at the sight. "Looks like someone's enjoying a family day," she said warmly. Daniel laughed, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. "Yeah," he said. "We're figuring it out together." Over time, Evelyn became more involved in Malik's daily life. She met his teachers, joined school events, and even started helping Daniel plan for the future college funds, savings, healthcare. Malik, who once knew only one parent, now had two people who loved him unconditionally. And Daniel, who once carried the weight of parenting alone, now felt supported and less alone. One weekend, Daniel, Malik, and Evelyn went on a short trip to the countryside. Malik ran through open fields, Evelyn chasing after him laughing, and Daniel capturing every moment with his phone. That night, as they sat around a small campfire, Malik leaned his head against Daniel's shoulder and whispered, "I'm happy, Daddy. And Mommy too." Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. He realized that love wasn't a finite resource, it grew the more it was shared. Malik's happiness was the bridge between the past and the future, a connection that neither time nor distance could break. Evelyn looked at Daniel, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Thank you for letting me in," she said softly. Daniel smiled, finally at peace. "Thank you for staying." In the days, months, and years that followed, their lives continued to blend naturally. Evelyn proved herself to be a loving and reliable presence, Daniel embraced her as a partner in parenting, and Malik thrived with the support of both parents. The bond they shared was not just about biology, it was about love, trust, and commitment. And in the quiet moments, when Malik was asleep, Daniel and Evelyn would sit together and watch the night sky, knowing that life had given them a second chance. A chance to heal, to love, and to grow together as a family. Through the tears, the fears, and the doubts, they discovered that true happiness comes not from wealth, status, or circumstance, but from the simple act of caring for one another. And in that care, they found the strongest bond of all, a family, complete at last, in love, trust, and togetherness.